I have some unsettling information on the royal family of England. Queen Camilla had withstood decades of criticism, royal opposition, and public rejection. But nothing had prepared her for this. King Charles wrote a private note that first surfaced within the royal family before making its way outside the palace walls. The message was short, very intimate, and hard to ignore. In a matter of minutes, Camilla realized that neither William nor the public or the media posed the biggest threat to her position. It had originated with Charles. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any updates before we delve further into what this actually implies for the royal family. Briefings, ceremonial preparations, and the expected discipline within the royal household kicked off the morning. Senior assistants were then called into a restricted meeting and removed from their offices. When private decisions could have an impact on the crown itself, a restricted meeting was a closed discussion that was only open to palace officials. There were already copies of a handwritten note circulating throughout the facility, and nobody knew who had published them. After a heated conversation concerning his wife's power, her future authority, and the tension between the various family lines, Charles wrote the note. He thought that another disagreement turning into a public issue would be too much for the monarchy to handle. But his choice of words was tougher than anyone had anticipated. According to the message, Camilla's judgment had become a burden for the crown, and her power needed to be curtailed before irreversible harm was done. When an assistant put the leaked text in front of Camilla, she was sitting by herself. She read the last sentence again. She pushed herself back, causing her chair to shift abruptly. She questioned, "Did he really write this?" The assistant was unable to soften the response. Through years of animosity, scandal, and disgrace, the queen consort had stood up for the monarch. The man she had shielded now seemed to doubt her reliability. Since this was not a dispute over a single incident, the humiliation went deeper. Written in his own hand, it was a secret verdict on her judgment. Only 3 senior people were supposed to get the memo from Charles, indicating that someone close to the top had decided to reveal it. She was far more terrified by that treachery than he was. The message was missing one piece. Camilla knew what that meant right away. An even more severe directive regarding her position next to the monarch might be found in the secret tunnel. She immediately wanted a private meeting. Then the last punch came from her assistants. Prince William had previously been called by Charles. Camilla thought the note was a betrayal. However, the lines on the paper were only the start of her humiliation when she realized who Charles had contacted first. 3 individuals with 3 distinct phobias stood behind the official titles. Camilla was afraid of losing the job she had worked so hard to achieve. Charles was concerned that defending his wife might undermine the organization he had vowed to uphold. William was concerned that if he remained silent, personal allegiances could harm the throne he would eventually inherit. A royal marriage, a father-son bond, and the future of the monarchy were all brought into the same room by the leaked note. Camilla had battled for years to gain the king's acceptance. Love had never been the only factor in her position. Public trust, royal discipline, and the conviction that she knew when personal influence had to stop were all necessary. She was deeply hurt by the note because of this. It didn't feel like one decision was being questioned when authority was diminished. Her entire voyage seemed to be silently devalued and condemned. With one hand on the door handle, Charles stood outside his study. He didn't come in. He was aware that William was waiting inside and that the chat had the potential to alter the family's structure as well as their relationship. As king, he was ultimately in charge of defending the crown, that is, the institution, obligations, and public confidence associated with the monarchy. However, because of the things he had written, he still wished to defend the woman who was sitting by herself as a spouse. When his father came in, William got up, but neither guy said anything right away. At last, the prince revealed that the note had voiced concerns that others had been too scared to share. Despite his careful word choice, the message came out as accusing. Charles heard more than just the heir counseling the monarch. He heard his son wonder if his judgment had been compromised by love. Camilla continued to believe that William had coerced his father into penning the note. She had someone to blame because of that mindset. However, until the memo leaked, the future monarch had never seen it. The mistrust surrounding her was worse than she had anticipated because his worries had grown independently. It was not owned by a single competitor. The whole household had been affected. Then Charles disclosed the true cause of his concern. Days before, he had received a sealed internal record. Sensitive decisions and contested directives were kept in a secret palace file. It mentioned other instances in which his own orders had clashed with Camilla's personal instructions. He had once given her a bracelet, which the Queen took off and carefully set on a side table. Without saying anything, her assistant observed. What Camilla would not say was conveyed by that tiny gesture. She was no longer just challenged. The man whose allegiance had once shielded her from everything left her feeling abandoned. The leaked note was not the start of the crisis. It had started weeks earlier during a royal ceremony when Charles's perception of his wife was permanently altered by a single instruction. Every royal breakup has a little time that seems insignificant until history looks back and acknowledges it as the start. That moment for Charles and Camilla occurred at Windsor Castle during a secret investiture rehearsal. No cameras, no crowds, and no public controversy. All that was present was a contested directive, a terrified young royal, and an order given in the king's name without his consent. Charles stopped worrying that Camilla was being misinterpreted by the end of that afternoon. He thought she had overreached herself. The organization of ceremonies, household appointments, seating arrangements, and access to senior royal areas had all become increasingly important to Camilla. An investiture was a ceremonial royal ceremony in which certain people received honors, and even the rehearsal process adhered to stringent regulations. Her increasing power was significant because even slight shifts in status could indicate future power, favor, and prestige. She could offer advice, but she couldn't give commands about William, Catherine, or their children without Charles's express consent, as he had already cautioned her in private. At Windsor, the warning was unsuccessful. Camilla gave the palace workers instructions to take Princess Charlotte out of the front family role during the practice. She informed them that the king made the final decision. As an assistant came over and requested Catherine to relocate, Charlotte stood motionless next to her. The youngster did not quarrel. Confused and suddenly unclear of what she had done wrong, she just turned to face her mother. Before Catherine could respond, William moved forward. He demanded to know who had approved the alteration and halted the rehearsal. Although restrained, the prince's rage was evident. He was not standing up for a spot in a line. He was shielding his daughter from being exploited in an incomprehensible fight. Until Charlotte left the room, Catherine stayed composed. She later had a private talk with Charles that was recorded by his senior secretary. The princess informed him that isolating the child by using his name had gone too far, and that there was no way to make it right. Her statements were important since the edict had made the king seem accountable, in addition to embarrassing Charlotte. When Charles questioned Camilla that night, she insisted that the arrangement preserved ceremonial order and defended the choice as required etiquette. In response, he said that protocol could not be developed to elevate the status of one individual at the expense of a child. More than wrath, the Queen was alarmed by the restraint in his voice. The written instructions were then created by a senior courtier using language that was reserved for the sovereign's office, wording that is typically only used with the monarch's consent. The wording had been authorized by Camilla's personal secretary. Charles hadn't. A broader internal review was promptly ordered by the king. What came next was far worse. Unbeknownst to him, a number of additional choices had been given as royal directives. The private note and the confrontation Camilla now requested were directly caused by those findings. When Camilla did eventually enter Charles's study, it wasn't to clear up a miscommunication. She was entering to confront her husband, who had started stealing her authority in private. The aides left, the doors closed, and Charles and Camilla stood by themselves for the first time since the leak. There was no royal procedure to manage the suffering, nor were there private secretaries to soften the remarks. After setting the printed note on his desk, Camilla posed a single query. "Is this anything you wrote about me?" Charles kept his eyes off the page. He gave her a look. Before he eventually responded, his brief quiet told her everything. Anticipating a rejection, Camilla had gone inside the king's study. She thought he might assert the leaked version had been changed, blame an aide, or challenge the language. Rather, even if the truth destroyed the marriage they had spent.